when I went to his bedroom to say goodnight, and he was crying because of the abuse that he was enduring in this school system.
Then why did you stay in Mexico?
You need to leave. It's disgusting.
That's indicative of what these kids are experiencing. That's indicative of what our kids are experiencing. Comments like that. And that's, no, he's sharing a story right now. And that's indicative of what our kids are experiencing.
Wasn't that beautiful? That was a school board meeting groiper. A grown adult man saying, why didn't you go back to Mexico? Or why didn't you stay in Mexico? Savage moments. This is Blazing Hogs. Right on to that, man. I have a fuller clip that was from MLive. Thank you, MLive. Chris out of LA. Chris, what's up?
What's up, Hake?
Hey.
Just calling to let you know, man. I don't, I resent that remark that guy made, and I also resent people like you who, applaud that kind of thing. I think it's just, grotesque. I'm Mexican myself. I'm Mexican American. I serve my country.
Yeah.
And a lot of Mexicans come here for a better life, and they serve their country. And this dude wasn't complaining about the United States or anything like that. He was talking about something going on in the school. So how does that have anything to do with, this guy jumping in time and go back to Mexico? It's just disrespectful. And I don't think, people think that because you're going out of your way to be a douchebag that makes you you're alpha. You can still be respectful to other people and not come off as some kind of jerk. You know what I mean?
But that was not being what you said. It wasn't. He wasn't being a jerk. He was saying, why didn't you stay in Mexico? Because in Mexico, he wouldn't be experiencing that kind of diversity.
Okay, but, they talk, you hear people say, oh, come to this country, speak English, assimilate,
yeah,
be a contributor. Don't just, and then when people like him, like Mexican dude is doing that, he's speaking English. You don't know if he's legal or not.
Right.
But odds are he is.
I don't know what the odds are. I don't know what the odds are.
We don't know that, but at the end of the day, the dude's trying to better himself, and it's like, oh, shut up. You're here in our country. Don't you have a right to say anything? It's like, isn't that the opposite of what everybody preaches? Is, oh, if you're going to come here, you need to assimilate and be part of us and make it, be a contributor. But then shut your mouth. You're not allowed to speak your mind, and you're not allowed to stand up and speak out for some, change. Because that's as citizens or as people of this country, we are the country. We're the ones that make the difference. We're the ones that drive.
But that's the problem, Chris. Don't you see the complainers, the people crying racism all the time? I don't know what this man was. And Chris, you said this man is trying to better himself. I don't know that. Where's the evidence that he's trying to better himself? He's complaining about.
He came to the United States.
What's that?
That's why everybody comes here.
No, they don't come to better themselves. They come to better their pocketbooks. Maybe.
That's what my family did. You're wrong, because that's what my family. They all came here legally, and they, my grandfather.
Well, this is why people.
Worker,
Chris, let me just express. Let me just express something on behalf of the Americans who don't.
I'm American too.
Yeah, I know, but you're taking offense on behalf of some man you don't even know. You don't know his situation, and you're accusing this white man of being a douchebag when you don't know if he was being a douchebag. That's a valid question. Why didn't you stay in Mexico if you're just complaining about the stupid, allegedly white racist kids? This is why people don't listen. This is why people don't like foreigners coming in here and then claiming to be American, because they try to change stuff and then they attack the victims as being the racists. The victims being the whites who don't listen. No, I'm still expressing it. This is why people don't like you guys coming in here, because you're going to take offense then listen. You're going to take offense at this stuff, call it racist, call it offensive and all this stuff. You're going to surrender to the Democrats and to the people who cry racism all the time and change the country. Hold on. You're going to surrender to the changing of the country into rhino or liberal. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, but you're giving credence to this anti-white hatred, which is you're calling somebody racist for saying, why didn't you just stay in Mexico? Because he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. This man who's complaining that his kid experienced racism allegedly, and we don't even know if that's true. He's saying, oh, my kids experience stuff in this school system. But that every kid experiences bad stuff. And so he's just complaining. And then he's talking out of both sides of his mouth saying this is the greatest country in the world. That's just kiss up, meaningless stuff. Go for it.
Okay, so.
And I don't care if you guys served your country. That doesn't mean anything to me. You guys get a benefit from serving the country. You benefit more from so-called serving than we benefit from you guys allegedly serving.
Did you serve?
No.
Okay, so then you're not one to talk.
You're not one to talk either because that's I don't have to kiss up to you, Chris. Chris, I don't have to kiss up to you just because you so-called served the country.
But don't dismiss us as we're.
I'm dismissing it because it is dismissible because you guys just benefit from it. You do it for the benefits. You're not doing it because you love the country.
Like, what are you talking about? You don't even know what you're talking about.
I do know what I'm talking about. You guys get the benefits from it. You don't do it because you love the country.
Died for this country, and thousands of Americans or Mexicans built this country, just like white people, just like Asian people.
I don't buy any of that stuff. Mexicans are helping destroy the country because they're falling for the stupid racism thing. They're getting mad because a white man.
It's a giant leap to say go back to Mexico because he's at a parent-teacher conference talking about his son. He wasn't saying this country is like he wasn't talking about the country, and yet
yes, he is talking about the country. Chris,
you're talking about the country. You're taking that giant leap.
No, it's not a giant leap because those kids, they are in this country, and they're complaining and crying, and it's pathetic. And you guys are getting offended. It reminds me of hold on.
Freedom is a God-given right. It's not because
it's not a God-given right.
Has that right. Yes, it is a God-given right. What are you talking? It's in the preamble. What do you mean?
It's not a God-given right to be in this country and complaining about it
endowed by our Creator.
And it's a God-given right for us to tell you guys to go back if you're going to be complaining and attacking the whites.
My country, you go back.
No, I don't have to go back.
This is my country. I was born here.
I don't care. You're an anchor baby.
Just as much as it is yours.
You're an anchor baby.
No, you're a fucking anchor baby.
See, now you're cussing. Why are you cussing? Okay. Phony. I don't know. But the whites are sick of this stuff. And it's no wonder that the whites are turning alt-right and all that stuff. La, la, la. Let me get to Chris out of Los Angeles. Chris, thank you for calling. What's up?
Hey, what's up, Hake? Calling you back, man. Remember our discussion Tuesday?
So you're the one who's, you were born in America. Did you call yourself Mexican-American or just your parents? And you're a veteran, you served in the military, and we had this big debate about
yeah, and I cussed on your show.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember.
Yeah, I put out the excerpt. It was a great excerpt. And I wanted to make that point about people are upset that, especially whites are upset that when a white guy calls out a Mexican father who's complaining about racism, why didn't you stay in Mexico? That other Hispanics get offended on behalf of that father who may not have been a good person. And so I don't like that identifying with this guy and getting offended on his behalf just because you identify with that.
Because, well, let me answer your question.
Okay.
So the problem is that people do that all the time, not realizing that, we're Americans too. We come to this country, or our ancestors came to this country. I didn't. I was born here, but, our ancestors come here to live a better life. And they come and are contributing people. They're good people, and they want to be Americans, contributing Americans. And, they treat us like, oh, you don't belong here. It's like, dude, you don't belong here either. Like, your ancestors came here just like ours did. So, why do you act like we don't have a right to say anything and speak out against, injustice? The guy wasn't talking about the country. He was talking about how his son was being treated.
Right. But man, there's three things with that. Let's see if I can remember them. One of them you said, we come here for a better life. That is a line that is overused, and I don't think that you're liberal. I think that you said that you're not, but that is a line abused by the liberals so badly that I have no sympathy for people claiming that they come here for a better life, because that's just words. I want people to be for character. And whites, rightly, I think, are getting sick of this complaining about racism supposedly happening. And this was a whole meeting about racism. And racism, I don't know if you're aware, but it's a false vice. And it's just used to attack whites and just upend the country and subvert the country and turn it into something evil, all under the pretense of treating each other right, you know? And so this guy coming in to a racism meeting complaining that his child was crying, I don't necessarily buy into that. I don't feel sorry for him.
Country.
Yeah. He was crying about how he was being treated.
And you took
but
the
listen,
giant leap, made it about the country.
Right, but it is kind of about the country, because this stuff is happening across the country, and it's happening against white people who may not even be wrong. Kids are making each other cry all the time.
You're doing the same thing that you're complaining about by saying that, oh, poor us, we're under attack. Like,
yeah, and whites
like,
should not be. But I'm telling
you,
you're being used by evil by identifying with that. And whites too. If we get angry,
look,
and if
I've
we
never
feel like
let
victims,
that stop me in my life.
hold on.
I've got to where I am at in my life because I just work hard and I do the right because of my character. I've had people call me out for being Mexican or whatever. Like, it's never stopped me. So I'm not in that boat, but I can't stand when people say, "Oh, go back to Mexico. You don't have a right to speak your mind." Like, it's like,
hey man, hey Chris, if they tell you that, they're lost. Don't let it get to you. But let's talk again. Let's talk again.
I don't appreciate that. All right, yeah, I'll be calling you back for sure.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
All right.
La la la.
And last week or so, I so-called disrespected a veteran on my show. A guy named Chris from Los Angeles. He called back, but it was towards the end of the show. Maybe he'll call again sometime. Because he played up that he's a veteran. And he was mad because I applauded that white man from Michigan that was seen in that footage of a school district meeting or something. Because some white kids used the N-word about referring to blacks, not the Nazi word, and said that the South will rise again or something like that. And so they called this diversity and inclusion meeting, and a Mexican man, Hispanic father, seemed kind of old to be having an elementary school age child, but if I get married, maybe I'll be that old guy having a kid young. But anyways, this Hispanic man, he's complaining about his son crying because of the racist whites in his school. And so this white man in this meeting says, why didn't you just stay in Mexico then? Then your poor child wouldn't have to deal with all these racist white people. And then the guy's like, because this is the greatest country on earth. Talking out of both sides of his mouth, right? This racism accusation is a smear on America and whites. It just is. And it's like it's a very destructive lie, right? So nobody should cower to it, and nobody should try to use it when complaining about how kids behave towards one another. Kids are always mean to one another, regardless of racial differences, right? Actually, some of the black kids are quite a bit meaner because of how they were raised. But this guy called into my show, Chris from Los Angeles. He's like, was born here. I'm American. My parents or mother or something like that were Mexican American. And I'm a veteran. I served my country. And I don't appreciate it when people say to go back to your country. This is my country too. And so basically, he's falling for that communist natural fissures between different races and different ethnicities and cultures that happens and is used to divide and conquer a country, rather than uniting with the white man who's like, dude, stop complaining, be a man. Raise your kid to be tough. He's siding with the Hispanic man, who he doesn't even know if this man is telling the truth about his child suffering so-called racist things. And so he's joining into the smears against white people who say, go back, or stay in your country if you're going to come here and complain. Well, and I did not respect this guy who was saying, I served my country. Because most of the people who served, they didn't serve out of the goodness of their heart. They served to get something back. Because the people who serve the country, generally, they're taken care of in terms of college and different things. Yeah, the VA's, the Veterans Administration, whatever, Veterans Affairs Administration, does abuse and disrespect veterans because it's a big bureaucracy and they're like the DMV, they don't handle things properly. But people you don't just respect people just because they served, especially when they beat you over the head with it and be like, you have to bow down to me because I served. If you served, where's your servant's heart now? He's telling me that I don't have a right to say something just because I didn't serve in the country. So I was right, because look at this female-minded sleaze, John Kelly, who was very respectable office, right? He was like a Marine Corps general, whatever he was. Now he's exposed himself as a politically correct coward. Thank you, Bible Go-To Guy, for the text. I'm going to get to, oh yeah, and I may get to Chris. He's called in, and some others have called in. So right on. Chris, thanks for calling in. What's up?
What's up, man?
Hey.
Yeah, I hear you calling my name out, so
Yeah.
I wanted to address a few things.
Okay.
All right, so first of all, I wasn't talking about you or anyone owes me respect for, my time in the military. Like that was an honor for me and a privilege.
All right.
And the point I was making is that people from, who immigrate here from Mexico or who are descendants from people that come from Mexico, they come and they assimilate. Not, there's bad apples, obviously, just like there's bad apples, for white people, black people, Asians, whatever.
Right.
Bottom line is, a lot of us come here, and I say us as in my ancestors, we assimilate, we are contributors, we even serve in the military. Many have died in the military, thousands. And
Right.
I looked at some statistics a while back. I mean, they're like, Mexicans are like the second most people who died in Iraq.
Right.
Or Hispanics.
I believe that.
So that's what I'm saying, man. It's like, just because we're brown and, we have, our culture, remnants of our culture, like, don't paint us as we're not Americans, because we are Americans.
Oh.
And if we have an accent or whatever, so that's the point I was making. Not that you owe me respect or my point is more valid than anyone else's.
All right.
Although you did say that, that I only joined for benefits. Like everybody gets
I wasn't
benefits.
saying that you did, but I said that I don't know why you joined or why anybody else joined. And so they don't automatically deserve like all this respect as though they're so patriotic. People don't join necessarily because they're patriotic.
Okay, well, I mean, that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
But that goes for white people. That goes for, I knew a lot of the white
True.
kids that came from the sticks, and they wanted to get the benefits because they were poor or whatever. I mean, that's part of the incentive why you serve. I mean, that's the least you can do is get paid for committing your life to something like that, or a portion of your life. I mean, just like any job, right?
Yeah.
Except this one, you volunteer to die.
So Chris.
Potentially.
Yeah. So Chris, consider this. That guy that you seemingly were defending from Michigan, the father who was complaining about his son crying when he went into his room to say goodnight, and crying allegedly because of racism experienced at the hands of white kids at that school. And the white man, you called him a douchebag for saying, the white man who was at this meeting over in Michigan said, so why didn't you stay in Mexico? You're complaining here. And it's a logical question, because if he had stayed in Mexico, then he wouldn't be experiencing the alleged racism at the hands of the white kids.
Come on, man. That's just ridiculous. Like, I mean, you're jumping leaps and bounds to get to that.
No, that's a logical.
He's not complaining about the country. He was complaining about, like,
But hold on, Chris. If he'd stayed in Mexico, would he have experienced so-called racism at the hands of the white kids?
Who knows? Who knows?
Exactly.
You're dark. There's white people in Mexico too.
I know, but they're Mexicans, mostly.
Okay, but but they actually treat, like, they call them mayates or whatever, like
Right.
dark-skinned people. There's racism in Mexico too, dude. Like,
But it's
don't
not
get it twisted.
racism. But anyways, that's kind of beside the point.
Oh, come on. Jeez, I mean, you're just...
It's not racism, man. You know very well. Hold on. You know very well that kids are cruel to each other, right?
Yes, they are. Yes.
And that father kissing up to his child's victimhood and kissing up to this idea of racism, that's very destructive to the country. I don't believe that you're I can't imagine that you consciously side on the side of these victim-minded people. You don't sound like you're a liberal. It sounds like you like and respect Jesse Lee Peterson. And yet, like you identify as an American, but somehow you identify also with this Hispanic man who was told, why didn't he stay in Mexico? When you don't know the character of this man. By all accounts, by all indications, this man is identifying with the racism thing, and yet he's paying lip service to this is the greatest country in the world, because he's why didn't you stay in Mexico? I didn't stay here, stay there because this is the greatest country in the world. And the guy's well, then why are you complaining? And I get that you're saying, but he's talking about the whole country when he's just complaining about this specific incident inside the country. But what's going on is around the country, whites are being accused of this racism thing when it's just kids being cruel to one another, and a kid crying needs a father who's going to say, toughen up, this is the real world, people are cruel to one another. Not come complain and bash whites for supposed racism. Whites are experiencing this so-called racism at the hands of Hispanics all the time, and blacks even worse. Like, blacks and Hispanics are the primary so-called racist people if you're going to believe in that thing.
You know what?
You know what I mean?
Everybody talks smack about everybody else.
Right,
like,
and that should not be a.
So you don't know. You can't put a statistic on it that they're the most.
You
like,
can.
You don't know that, dude.
You can.
No, you can't.
Yeah,
no,
you can.
Can't. You don't. Well,
Common experience, Chris, be honest. Common experience says that if you believe in this racism thing, and you're honest, blacks are the most so-called racist people. And Hispanics are following in their footsteps because they see that it's working, and they use it a lot too. And then you see Asians doing it, you see whites falling for it too. They're getting that victim mindset. I know you even called out that the whites are now acting like the victims too. And that's true. So you shouldn't go along with this father who's going along with this. You don't really buy into this diversity and inclusion stuff, do you?
Well, let me just respond to your two main points. And
okay.
One of them is, as far as this guy, like, well, let's talk about, complaining, victimhood or whatever. Like, I totally agree with you. Like, man up. Like, the world's cruel. Nobody cares about your feelings. Like, you do what you got to do, and you make shit happen for yourself. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
So you make things happen for whatever you got to do, and suck it up. Man up. I'm totally about that. And that's what I've done. I've experienced whatever you want to call it, prejudice, racism. It's all, arbitrary labels. But at the end of the day, like, because of my appearance, I've been treated a certain way. But that's never stopped me, man. I'm actually very successful. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying I'm not going to go into it. But I've come far, man, and most people my age from my neighborhood still doing the same bum-ass stuff.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 36.
Okay.
And so I just never stopped me, man. And my dad raised me to be a proud American. He's always told me from little. My dad's, like I said, we're all Mexican-American descent, but he's always grounded into my head that you're an American first, and I've always been proud to be an American, dude. Like, I fly the American flag, all that stuff. So
yeah.
I consider myself to be American first. And second of all, as far as the guy, defending the guy, what I don't like is that because, and I did my research on this guy. He came from Mexico, like in the 80s. He opened up a restaurant. He's an American. He's legal, all that stuff.
The one with the complaining about his son, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, he has every right, just like we all do, if you agree with him or not, to speak on something that he doesn't, whatever he wants to speak on.
Right.
And that doesn't give anybody the right to say, hey, well, you go back to Mexico.
But yes, it does.
Like, it doesn't. Because
No.
first of all, he wasn't talking about the country. Let me just finish my
Okay.
point, and then you can say what you got.
All right.
Like, he wasn't complaining about the country, first of all. And second of all, just because, doesn't give people a license to be disrespectful. That's the point. That's the problem I have is disrespect. Like, I respect you, you respect me, but you're going to disrespect me. It's not because I'm butthurt about it. It's just like, that to me, then that makes you a douchebag because you don't have the courtesy or common respect for another man to, like, at least hear him out and, like, talk to him before you just say, oh, go back to Mexico, when he wasn't even talking about the country. And I've heard that stuff all the time. It's like, go back to Mexico. Like, no, you go back, dude. It's like, I'm an American. This is my country. I've earned the right, like, more than most who, like, haven't served. And I'm not saying, like, my service was amazing and I deserve the Medal of Honor, but, like, just that fact alone puts me up a notch, or, versus people who just are born here and they're white or whatever and say, oh, well, this is my country. And, like, what have you done for the country, dude? Nothing. So don't try to tell me that you are more entitled than I am.
But hold
I'm
on.
not entitled. Like, it was a blessing. Anyway, I'm done. Go ahead.
So, man, number one, if you really believe in the freedom of speech and you have the spirit of the freedom of speech, that white man did have the right to say that to that man. Even if you think that it was disrespectful, he had the definite right to say that to that man. And second of all, he may not have been thinking that this is an indictment on the whole country, but people use examples like this all the time, and the liberal media does it all the time. And I submit to you that this man who, built the business and all that stuff is he's a useful idiot for that dumb racism narrative that is very destructive to the country. I'll
agree with you on that there is a divide and conquer agenda to divide the people based on race and all that. We're fighting each other.
Last question. Or I think it's the last one. Did you support Trump?
I support him for, as far as he's the best guy for the job right now. Everybody else is a complete joke. I don't see anybody else better than him.
What do you respect about him?
Well, he gets things done as far as, like, he supports the military. He just kind of, like, steamrolls people that, are just trying to slander him, or, I actually like that he has the cojones to just, shut people down. And I kind of, I like that, that straightforward boldness in people, not the cowering, like, pandering. I can't stand that,
I'm getting 3 comments and questions. And we can talk more another time. Number 1, I'm getting a text that says he did not say go back. He said, why didn't you stay? That's just a fine point. You may think that it's a nitpicking point, but that's just correcting the record. He said, why didn't you stay in Mexico? He didn't say go back. Okay. And number 2, I think that you seem like you are taking personal offense because I know you don't appreciate people saying go back. And so I think that you have this trauma, if you'll allow me to use that word on you, of go back to your country, that thing, that you're taking that more personally than you should. And that's not, as a man, you should not be taking that personally, especially not on another guy's behalf. Even if he is, I respect that he built his business, as you say that he did, I believe that, but he's probably liberal. But anyways, whatever. And number 3, are you voting for Trump in 2020?
I haven't decided yet.
Dang. All right, man. Last one. How did you find Jesse and my show?
I actually found Jesse, and I don't remember how exactly I found him. I think it was just looking up alpha male stuff or something like that, and came across his savage beta moments. Yeah. So that's kind of where it took off from there, and I think he's right, and I've actually spoken to him, over on his show, and he has a lot of wisdom, and like every man, we're all flawed in some way. So there's some things that don't necessarily align with, but at the end of the day, I think he's a man of God, and I respect him, and I think he's a good example for what a man should be, in a world that's filled with so many betas. It's just like a sick world we're living in now. So. Yeah, big time. Well, Chris, man, if you can, you should come to church or the men's forums. We have men's forums first Thursday. Yeah, I'd like to meet I'd like to meet you
7
in
p.m.
person. We could actually sit down and talk some more. And I don't want to keep hogging up your show here. So
All right.
I think I got all my points crossed. So thanks for hearing me out, man.
Yeah. Thanks for calling in. Take care.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right.
La la la.